entertains me. I don't know whether the Chinese or the Russians are plugged in to see whether they're going to allow us in. After 3, can everyone say hello? 1, 2, 3.
Hello.
Oh, there's a bit of hesitation there, wasn't there? Because it's like it's only the start of the week, everyone. It's not the end of the week. Susie, great to have you on. We're just going to let all the social media kick in properly. Hello, everyone. My name is Max McGillivray from Beanstalk Global. Today, we are broadcasting again with Women in Food and Farming. And we've got the utterly fantastic Susie McIntyre, Kettle Produce. And we're really excited to have her on for reasons that we'll discuss a little bit later. But team, whilst we're waiting for the social media to kick on, I hear there's a couple of things going on. One really sad, but we're very proud of, but one very, very good that we're really keen to hear about. Kirsty, tell us about the Women in Food and Farming in-person event and how that went in London the other day.
Yeah, so we had our first in-person event in over 2 years last Tuesday, and it was fantastic. We had over 80 participants join us. We had talks by myself and Christine on a variety of different topics, and also a lot of impromptu speakers who felt that they were able to add something. And that's one of the fantastic things about Women in Food and Farming, is we're all there to listen and learn from each other.
And numbers? What sort of numbers did you have?
Just over 80, but what was really good from our perspective is there's quite a large number of under 30s there as well. And that's one of the things we really wanted to promote, is that there are people who can go and learn about how to progress their career and get some advice, but there's also people that you can go and talk to in terms of what is it younger people are looking for and what's important to them. So lots of exchanges of information both ways.
And Debbie, sorry, Kirsty.
No, I was just saying we have decided that we would do another one, and we will be releasing those dates shortly in the next few weeks. Hopefully we can get something booked in and share all that information with you.
And Kirsty, that'll be in the same format, probably the same location, the same style.
Very likely it'll be definitely the same type of format with probably conversational speakers, and then we will also have our sponsored under 30 tickets as well. But more details we will sort of finalise it based on feedback that we received from our event that we had last week.
Debbie, were you happy with this?
I thought it was great. It was a lovely example of how women can get together and support each other. It was lovely to see so many young women, and also what young women wanted to reach out to various other people of different ages and different bits of the industry. And it was just a lovely, rounded, interactive event. I loved it. It was great. Please can we do some more?
Yeah, no, that's so good. And Christine, I think that's everything that we all aspire to in the respect of doing these monthly broadcasts as we got through the last couple of years, just to keep the continuity of Women in Food and Farming going, so that you could pick up again on the face-to-face. So Christine, I presume you're happy as well.
Very happy, and I think it was interesting that it brought different people. Some people had never heard of Women in Food and Farming, but they heard about the event on Eventbrite and came along. And I think it shows the value of having these monthly broadcasts with speakers and having in-person events. The one thing we're missing is a website where we can put it all together, and somebody that comes to one of these can then go back and see some of the speakers. And somebody at the event actually offered to sponsor a website. So it was all hugely successful.
Excellent. And Susie, that's what as we were saying in the green room, that's what I like about the eclectic nature of Women in Food and Farming. It's not overly structured, but it just works, and it has worked. Christine, do you want to just give a quick background on Women in Food and Farming so everyone knows, and everyone knows why they should engage?
It started with 4 chief execs meeting on a farm and looking at each other and thinking, crikey, we're all women. This is just so unusual, and that we should do more to help women in the industry. And they contacted me when I was running the Co-op Farms, and Jane King, who at the time was editor of Farmers Weekly, and said, why don't we meet together and support each other? And we decided we would, but each of us would bring along 2 people that none of the rest of us knew. And that was really where it got into mixing and bringing new people in. And from that, we've now grown to a membership of, I think it's over 600 now, isn't it, Kirsty? And it's really just people supporting each other, and it's free to join. And when we have an in-person event, we generally find somebody that will give us the room for free. So we just need a little bit of money towards the food and wine, and hopefully find somebody that will sponsor under 30s.
Yeah, no, that's great. As Kirsty said about having that sort of number that were there. So that's all very positive. Can we just have a bit of positive reminiscing about the celebration for Caroline Drummond?
Yes.
Christine, do you want to just tell us what occurred last week, please? On that.
Yeah, she was there right from the beginning in Women in Food and Farming. She was at that very first lunch that we had, and then we moved it to evenings because we all talked too much and lunch wasn't long enough. And we all identified that the things that most of people around the table were either working in environmental work, sustainability, or communication. And we thought, well, what's farming not done well the last 20 years? It might be communication and it might be looking after the environment. And this is when we met, 10, 15 years ago. And we felt very much that was what was missing. And that's why you need diversity, because everybody brings something different to the party. But Caroline came to every single in-person event, and she was our speaker in March this year. Yeah. A huge supporter the whole way through. And I went to her, we actually spoke about her at the Women in Food and Farming event, and I noticed that the under 30 people were writing her name down, thinking I must go and find out about this person because they didn't know who she was. But at the memorial service, it was just a wonderful eclectic mix of people from all walks of farming. You go to the Oxford Farming Conference and you meet certain sorts of people, and you go to a sustainability event with different people. We were all there, fresh produce people, everything at Caroline's event. And I chatted to her husband afterwards, who said it would make Caroline so proud that her memorial service ended up being a fantastic networking event. Yeah,
no, she was fantastic, is fantastic, and the legacy that she's left for Leaf is going to just going to go on from here, isn't it? So it's appalling to lose her, but what she's left behind is utterly amazing, and her legacy she'll live on.
Indeed.
So let us honour our guest of honour, Susie McIntyre. Debbie, how do you know Susie? Kirsty, do you want to just turn off your video? I'm pushing you out the room. Kirsty, lovely hairstyle, by the way, new hairstyle.
Thanks very much, Rex.
So
Debbie, how do you know Susie?
I'm very lucky to know Susie. Susie is an amazing character, and she heads up a fantastic organisation that basically organises growing vegetables in a wonderful part of Scotland, and then organises making them real for supermarkets. And I was lucky enough to be a techie working for a supermarket, and Susie was the head of a supplier, and I am terribly grateful for all the good big work that her and her team did to support the areas I was working in. And I'm just so in awe of both Susie and Kettle. I can't explain it well enough. So that's my introduction to Susie and Kettle. So Max, please pick up from there.
Debbie, you know this well. Susie, was Debbie a good technologist to have her around, kicking around?
Well, she was until she dumped that load of pressure at your feet. Thanks a million, Debbie. No, honestly, Debbie has been an absolute pleasure and a joy to work with her all the years that we've worked with her. And we had so much fun. We had a lot of hard work, but my goodness, we had a lot of good times and a lot of fun as well.
And it was just a joy to see some of the vegetables being grown in sequence, and the way that all the growers work together to provide fantastic fresh veg, but also in a very environmentally and sustainable way. And it's just a joy, and I am forever grateful. But I wanted Susie to come on and talk about various things to do with Kettle, and this particular topic is very pertinent, and I'm very grateful that you've agreed to talk about it.
Excellent. Team, can I just ask a favour? Debbie, can you stay on with me talking with Susie? Because I think to have your, and I'm being serious here for once, your professional objective question as well with Susie or commentary would just really complement things really well. Would that be okay, Debbie?
Yeah, that's okay.
Susie, is that okay?
Of course it's fine.
You sure? You sure? Right. Just for everyone on the podcast, especially, I just want to give a bit of background to Kettle Produce. So Kettle Produce is a market leader for the provision of fresh and prepared vegetables. They're passionate about their food, and as such work closely with their farmers who grow for them, ensuring that they supply high quality produce to their customers. Based in Fife, Scotland, they employ over 1,100 permanent staff across their sites and are one of the largest private sector employers in the region. Through their trusted network of suppliers, they have over 5,000 hectares. I had to read that a couple of times. 5,000 hectares of crops grown in Scotland and around the world, ensuring continuity of quality and supply. They deliver daily to their customers nationwide. Susie, when I was just looking at that background information, you'll know that other companies within the whether it be fresh produce or the greater food industry, they have huge websites and lots of videos and lots of jingoistic stuff. To me, Kettle Produce, your website is absolutely fantastic, but you just get on with it. And you've just always had this reputation of being incredibly professional and just getting on with it. What is the background to Kettle Produce? How was Kettle Produce formed, please?
Oh, okay. Well, thanks, Max. I actually take that as quite a compliment, because I'm very much of the view, you get your head down, you get your sleeves rolled up, and you just get on with the job in hand. So thank you for that. The business was started by two growers, one of whom was my dad, and another local grower. And we started in his family farm's shed, growing cabbages, cauliflower, and swede. And that was way back in 1976. And we got a route to market for that product into a UK retailer on the back of the fact that my dad had been a strawberry grower prior to that.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
And from sweet to strawberries, or strawberries to sweet, it's quite a change.
And so just roughly, when was that first meeting in the shed? What year-ish?
1976.
Right, okay. So actually, Debbie, in the grand scheme of things, that's not that long ago. You think of some other produce companies that have been around. So Debbie, Susie, the growth, the rise of Kettle has been phenomenal. Is that because there was just no other offering in Scotland, that no one had the foresight of your father and his partner to get growers together to grow quality produce for supermarkets? Was that the magic dust?
I don't think you can probably say there was just one shaking of magic dust, Max, if I'm truthfully honest. I think there was probably a few things that just made it all hang together. One, I think, is the area in which we grow. Scotland is really quite unique, and we have the ability to grow a diverse range of products, which creates quite a market opening and opportunity. There wasn't really anybody else in Scotland growing these products and in the volume that they were being grown. They were being grown for the wholesale market rather than the retail sector. And it was quite a different market to attract custom from. And I think the other part is, as the business evolved and it grew, it became quite invested in expanding the marketplace in which it was in. So, we moved quite mid-80s, so probably really quite early on, into trying to make value from all our waste. And we moved from just a fresh market business to a prepared market business. Okay. And that, I think, was also a good opening.
Yeah, and that's Debbie. That's that whole area of prepared produce is not an easy sector to be involved in, is it?
No, but the other thing that's nice about Kettle is the lovely trust that exists between the people who work at Kettle and the growers, and it's just a most wonderful squared circle, because the growers totally respect and trust the people at Kettle to help them decide how many hectares of this, that and the other, and when to sow it, and when it's likely to come ready for harvest. And it's just a lovely trusty thing, and I found that very powerful. And to your credit, because I know it's not just you and your team, it's actually the growers as well, but they all work together, and I really like that. That's for me, the magic dust is the fact that they all work together in a lovely trusty way.
Yeah, I've got my cheeky smile on again, because I remember being in a couple of shoot wagons over the years, one in East Anglia, where a large potato farmer was saying he was so unhappy with his growing group that he was going to leave next season because they weren't giving enough. And then likewise, that same season, I was in I don't shoot that often, but I was in a shoot wagon up at the Borders, and they supply Kettle. And I asked them, "Oh, what's the relationship like with Kettle?" Knowing what the relationship was with this potato farmer down in the south. So, oh, it's brilliant. It's fantastic. It's like, well, one big family. And that just, again, Debbie, that to me, that just summarised how why Kettle Produce is different, and why it doesn't need to shout about who it is, because it just gets on with it. Susie, what's your background then? So if your papa set up the business, how did you get to be involved with the business?
By default rather than by design. if I'm really honestly truthful. I did a degree at uni, and then after that decided that teaching was going to be the career for me. So I did a postgraduate in teacher training. And when I finished that, I spent a summer counting blue pallets of all things. And if ever there was a route to hemorrhage cash and to simply flush it down the drain, mismanagement of pallets most definitely falls into that category. And on the back of that, I found myself getting offered a permanent job, and I just flipped a coin. Will I teach or will I come into the business? And I think I came up heads I was winning, tails I was losing, and I have no doubt in my mind now I made the right decision.
I was thinking about this when I was walking the dogs earlier. I'm just going to ask you, any regrets? Because you could have gone teaching, you could have done any particular. Did you? Was it sort of de facto that you had to? And we know this within farming families. Was it de facto that you had to? You felt a bit bound to follow the family. So are you happy with that direction that you went, or have you got regrets about not going into teaching?
I look at my teaching friends now, and I look at the lifestyle they lead. And don't get me wrong, at the end of June when they break up for 8 weeks holiday, and that's them when they walk away from the workplace for 8 weeks and don't need to think about it. Of course you wonder, but the reality is no, I wouldn't change it for a thing. And I certainly didn't feel compelled to at all. I have a brother who is in the oil industry, and he lives and works in London. And there was absolutely no pressure. Quite the contrary, actually. We were regularly told, whatever you do, for heaven's sake, don't rely on nature for your livelihood, and get away from farming. Yeah, but but haven't we all got the same issue that you cut us all in half? Whether that be Christine, Kirsty, yourself, Debbie, we all I was going to say bleed. We all show our love of farming and agriculture. I expect your brother enjoys the oil industry in London. But Susie, could you imagine yourself being in London in a role? I love London. I love visiting. I love the buzz and the hype of it. But I absolutely love when I get back off the plane at Edinburgh or Dundee, wherever it is, or step back into the clean air, and I look up and I can see stars and I can see a horizon.
Yeah.
You just don't see any of that in the city.
Yep. Okay, but then I was really impressed, staggered that the number of people that you employ in the business. And as I think we've discussed before on this broadcast series, the best thing about running a business is employing people. The worst thing about running a business is employing people. And I remember a commercial director for BT when I went to, I think, Cranfield University, saying that running a business with more than 500 people is a nightmare on a communications and on a cultural basis, especially if you've got external suppliers, especially if you're on a multi-site basis. And in effect, that's what you've got, Susie. You've got all those external growers. You've got over 1,000 people on multiple sites. How do you do it? I'm presuming it's not just you, Susie. You're not the first person in at 6 o'clock opening the door, making sure that there's paper in the fax machine. Remember those? And locking up at night. Presumably, do you have a really nice, trusted management team around you?
Oh, absolutely. And we ditched the fax machine a long time ago, Max. The teletext one too while we were at it. No, it is so reliant on having great people around you. And I feel so fortunate because, a fantastic board, tremendous management team, and guys who've been working with us. Actually, we've just been updating our long service award boards, and we have them up on all sites. And, there are people on there that have over 40 years experience and have been with us since day one almost. We have one of our board who actually lied about her age to start. She's now 40 years in the business, and, she started at 15 telling us she was 16.
Excellent. I hope you put her through a disciplinary on that
I think
basis.
sometimes she maybe feels she gets that in a daily basis anyway, just doing her job.
Oh no! So just give us a couple of highs, Susie, of running Kettle Produce. Gone off the top of your head, a couple of highs, a couple of things that make you really proud when you're walking the dog or whatever your thing is. That could give you a huge, big, long list. But one of the biggest highs I always get is
when someone gives you a success story, however big or small that is, of something that's really worked in their day. And one of the other biggest surprises that you get, and great highs, is when you're not expecting a piece of news, or you're not expecting something, and the unexpected simple things happen. And the list of these sorts of things are endless. But, you know, for me, it's all about people. You know, when people leave and then they decide they want to come back, and you know, they're looking to come back, that to me has got to be one of the biggest wins you can ever have. It speaks volumes, and it's like having a member of your family back. Yeah, and that doesn't happen often. Again, that's a really good and indicative of the culture of the business. Chris Evans, I think we talked about him previously, that his autobiography is really interesting. That when he bought Virgin Radio, he said that I adopted this open door policy, that anyone could come in. Okay, I owned the business, I was the boss, but anyone could come in and talk to me about anything that they wanted. And he found very quickly that he had people coming in to talk to him about the cat getting run over, which is appalling, or breaking up with the boyfriend, or that they didn't have enough money to pay for the Chinese that night. And he just got so filled up with all of this other people's baggage, he didn't know what to do, but he wanted to keep this open door policy, but he couldn't manage it. With yourself, Susie, what's your management style? How can we learn from you? How do you manage Kettle Produce so that people can be in touch with you, but also you want, it's not that you want to be aloof, but you can't be with them all the time. What's your management style? I think the key is to always engage with people and always try and be consistent. You know, you choose your attitude when you cross the threshold every day, and you need to come in with a smile on your face, and when people want to speak to you, you need to provide that ear. It's key. It's important. And I would just say you need to be real. You need to be authentic, and people need to know you are authentic. That to me is a key driver. Yeah. And Debbie, come on, you and I have been around the block a couple of times. We've seen a lot of businesses either still going, or some that have failed. And to me, the ones that have failed, is normally down to that people element, Debbie, isn't it? Yeah, they just haven't got that.
For me, Kettle it's the trust and the fact that it's real. And you know, they just, exactly as you described at the beginning, they just get on with doing it. So whatever's happening, they get on with doing it. And it's just, they're just so reliable. So
I go back. Sorry, Debbie.
But we do need to segue, Max.
Yeah, no, here it comes. Right,
come on.
Yeah, I do attempt to be slightly professional about this occasionally, Debbie. So, Susie, we had your highs. Presumably, this has all been a bed of roses. You've had no horrors along the way, have you? Yeah, I've had one or two. Bumps on the road, I think you might describe them as, but it's how you handle them, Max. That's the measure of you. Yeah, and this is why one of the reasons why Debbie was really keen to get Susie on, because we're going to talk about crisis management. So everything with Kettle Produce looks to be very happy, very, very glowing. But there have been some hiccups along the way. Susie, tell us about this hiccup that you had, so that we can learn from you and your team about how you handle a business and people in a crisis. Okay, well, let me tell you a bit of a story. So I suppose it seems like an absolute lifetime ago that I agreed I was going to do this chat with Christine and Debbie. And to be honest, I know you're saying we had any crisis, but I'm not sure that now people would even contemplate talking crisis management, because you would think that everywhere we go, we're facing into, I guess, what you'd call a crisis, a financial crisis, a labor crisis, fuel crisis, energy, supply chain, you know, whatever it might be. And these crises, I think I would really describe them now as almost business as usual, because they're things we're facing every day and without any real ending in sight. I guess perhaps what you're talking about, Max, is something a bit different, and it's not necessarily, it is a crisis, but it's not immediate. I guess the difference is perhaps between something that's chronic versus something that's an acute, long-term back pain versus a broken leg, if you like. Yeah, okay. If crises are what we face, and I guess we manage routinely, then perhaps what we're talking about is incident management, something that's event-driven and has an immediate impact. Yeah.
And we handle these things quite regularly. We use something I called our business continuity plan. We treat it like a Bible.
Wow.
It was something we developed way back in 2006. I think it was our insurers who were very keen we did it. And in those days, they rather cheerily called it a disaster recovery plan. Thankfully, we're a bit more positive in these days. And you know, we did it on the guise that, okay, we need to do it. We thought it was a huge amount of work, and we probably thought it was quite a waste of time. Had it not been for the fact that it was going to impact our insurance bill quite considerably, we probably would never have done it.
Wow.
But actually, it's one of the best things we've ever done.
Okay. If it's okay, we'll come on and talk about the devastating fire that you had on site and how that worked. But presumably that disaster recovery plan, have you been able to deploy it for the likes of COVID, for the likes of energy crisis, for the likes of the ramifications of the Ukrainian war? Have you been? Is it that robust a plan that you can deploy it for different circumstances?
Well, without a doubt, you know, it really is that step-by-step instruction manual, a guide, a framework, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, when you have that real gut-wrenching, stomach-churning, sort of unthinkable thing happen to you, it gives you that structure to get through that moment that it hits you between the eyes and you think, what the heck are we going to do now?
Wow.
And we've used it. We use it. We have training sessions on it, but we've used it. Probably the most recent thing we used it for was Storm Arwen.
Okay.
We've used it for fuel shortages, power outages, COVID shutdown, IS system failures, and yes, you're quite right. The one we probably used it for most robustly, certainly the one we remember using it most for would be the fire.
Yeah. Okay. This is a bit rude, but just see what you think to this. There's a quote I saw yesterday from Mike Tyson, of all people, and as he stated, everyone has a plan until they get smashed in the face. So it's a bit, but with that disaster recovery plan, it is that robust, is it? That it can cover from everything from a storm to a fuel crisis to the likes of a major fire. It is that adaptable, is it?
It is, and it's designed to be such. The point is you make it unique to you, and ours is unique to us as anybody else's would be to them, and it picks up all your action points, all your triggers, and you know, everybody will look at it in a different way. Everybody will have all their own plans within it, their key activities, their key drivers, and their key triggers. And the trigger for us in instigating the plan is something that's going to disrupt the business for 24 hours or more.
Okay.
And it can be any part of the business. It doesn't need to be sort of a specific part of the business.
Debbie, are you aware of other large-scale businesses within agriculture and fresh produce that actually have a deployed disaster recovery plan? I'm not sure I do.
No, I'm not as well, but certainly places like the big supermarket that I worked at and the big brand that I worked at absolutely do. And they not only have it, but they train people into it, and they review regularly. So it's probably something we should think about, or farming and fresh produce should probably think about it a bit more. But what was for me impressive was the fact that you had the Kettle had a massive issue, a massive fire, and you did manage to get up and running, and you did manage to get stuff out of the door into supermarkets, and you then did build back. And I just thought that was so absolutely impressive, because it was not a small event.
Yeah, and I won't nominate them, but there was a fire recently in our area of East Anglia of a business in the vegetable sector, and that business went under a year later, citing that fire. And so you can imagine they didn't have a disaster recovery. If it's okay to ask, Susie, tell us about this fire. When did it occur? What happened?
Sure. Well, shall I just walk you through it and then give you an indication of how we did what we did and our route to recovery, I think. And the route, it's a huge long story, but maybe if I just give you a bit of an outline of it and then give you my takeouts of what I think that I would look for in a recovery plan if I were listening to this. How does that sound?
Perfect. Far away, madam.
Okay, in that case, let me just get onto.
We met Susie's IT man earlier.
He's still here.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so I'm just about to share a screen here, so bear with me 2 seconds.
Excellent. Yeah, Debbie, I'm sure I'd love people to say in the comments whether their businesses have a disaster recovery plan. But I think a number of people just work on the basis, oh, it won't happen to us. Why do we need to put time and effort into that? But I do know other businesses that have got that file, and when they've had an accident on work, they've deployed it very, very successfully. But yeah, it'd be fascinating.
It's not just having the plan, though, is it? It's being able to have people who can execute it and regularly review it and revise it, because things change.
Yeah.
And it's about everybody knowing what they're going to do during that.
Yeah.
Max, can I just jump in while we're waiting?
Go, Christine.
It was just to say, if you look at what the things that have affected industry, I mean, at the Co-op, we had a travel business, and nobody predicted things like the Iceland volcano. And, it seems to me some of the biggest things that have hit businesses, if you include COVID as well, nobody's actually been prepared for that. It's almost as if some of the things that are happening are far worse than anybody ever thinks of. They think, oh, what had the electricity cut? But, some of the things that are happening to business have been massive. So, to say we don't need a recovery plan, nothing will happen. Just look at the things that have happened that nobody saw coming.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so impressed with the Susie and Kettle Produce that the recovery plan can cover so many different things. Susie,
I think that's it, Max. I think the key is your recovery plan is a plan. It's not giving you every incident that could possibly happen. It's a structure to give you that platform. It's a step-by-step guide as to what to do, what you need to consider, the areas you need to be looking at, rather than necessarily an absolute recipe guide as to, how to make it work.
Yeah.
So if I can just
go, Susie.
You should all be seeing that screen now. Yep. So that's our site at Orkney, our roots plant. So we've two sites. They're a couple of miles apart. This one is our roots plant, where we wash and pack and grade all our dirty crops. And our other site 2 miles away is head office, and it's where we pack all our green veg, are ready to cook. And this site now has ready to eat on it as well. So way back, the Friday, the 9th of April, my phone rang at 10 to 5 in the morning. And you just know when you get a phone call at that time in the morning, it is not going to be good news. And it was our engineering manager. Susie, he said, Orkney's on fire. Everyone's out, but everyone's okay. And the fire brigade are on their way. I don't live very far away. And 5 minutes later, I was out on the farm road. And this is the site I was met with.
Wow.
5 minutes later, he and I are standing on site. We're on our phones, contacting our teams, communicating already what we were needing to do, feeling, if I'm honest, feeling highly impotent and just listening. We could hear, it's 6 a.m, there's not a lot of traffic. We could hear the sirens coming. We knew the fire brigade were on their way. And it really was 10 of probably the longest and yet the shortest moments of my life. And just a quick one. People always says, what happened? How did it start? And the long and the short of it is we still don't know. The police crawled all over. You can imagine their forensic team crawled all over us for days. They came up with no answer. And then your insurers crawl all over you because they really are desperately looking to find someone on whom to lay the responsibility and ultimately the bill, because they would rather it falls on somebody else's lap naturally rather than theirs. But they too left without an answer. So we can tell you where it started, but we really can't tell you how it started.
Wow.
And so the fire brigade arrive on site and you are so relieved to see them. But the minute they arrive on site, you're under their control and you have at best restricted access to any of your buildings. And we were lucky we had a standalone engineering workshop on site, which became our command centre and the fire brigade's command centre on site for the duration that they were there. We had all our plans and we had everything on site there that we needed, except our site. We knew at that point that we were going to have to action our BCP. It was, the first calls we were making at 6 a.m. And those first 2 hours are spent just communicating. You want to gather as much information as you possibly can. Because we'd been using the BCP, because we trained against it, the heads of department, the senior management team knew what sort of information they were going to be needed. Because at this point in the game, we genuinely believed we weren't really going to be out of the site for very long, a few days, maybe to the start of the following week. The fire brigade would get the fire out and we'd be back in. A little bit of damage, we wouldn't necessarily get full access to everything, but it really wasn't going to stop us in our tracks. So at 8 in the morning, we began our first business continuity plan meeting, and that was at our other site, which was, control center. And the first piece you do is an information give on what's actually happening on the site, of what you know live in the moment. In this instance, really not an awful lot. The site's on fire, the fire brigade are there, everybody's safe. We don't think it's going to be that serious. And the working assumption is what you base your next set of plans on. So we made the working assumption we were going to be out of the factory till probably the middle of the following week.
Okay.
But then the department heads look at everything they need to do. So what impact's that going to be on them, on their department, on the immediacy and going forward for the next few days? What were they going to need to do? What were they going to need to enact? How were they going to get information? What format did that need to take? And how did it work up and down and across the supply chain? So how was it going to affect our raw materials that were coming in? How was it going to affect what we were harvesting? How was it going to affect what we were putting out? And the other piece, and Christine touched earlier on the need for communication, the key part is communication. And we created very quickly, we actually had a list in our business continuity plan. For those who have a business continuity plan, you'll know you've got battle boxes, and you keep battle boxes on various sites, and within that battle box you have all sorts of things that you think will be pertinent to the needs of your business. And one of them is a list of all your contacts, because it's perfectly feasible that you're not going to have all of those at your fingertips if you can't get into your offices or onto your IT systems. So we had a list of all our contacts, and we made a plan of who was going to be speaking to them, and we plan to meet again in 3 hours when we've got more info.
Wow.
So it really, really is critical that you get that communication piece right, no matter how much or how little information you have, because what we found is that nature abhors a vacuum. And actually, we then made it a priority for us to give a regular factual update from the start. And in doing so, that kind of gives you the ability to some degree, maintain control of the information. And it stops you wasting time, valuable time, dealing with misinformation and noise. You don't really want to be doing that. That's just an absolute pain that you don't need. And we also created a holding statement for everyone to use for all our external comms and some internal. And the press, we left to our PR company to deal with that. That sounds really grand. We don't have a PR company. We have a light touch with a PR organization who we've worked with for years, and they handle our our relationship with the press when we're publishing our accounts, our annual accounts, and doing local charity and PR work, that sort of thing. The press are desperate to come on site. They want the scoop, they want the news, but they are the last people you need or want on site. So to have someone who can keep them well informed and feeling engaged, but at bay is a real benefit. So by 11 o'clock, we'd started on our second business continuity plan. And the situational update was that by that point, we had 14 tenders on site. So we were pretty certain at that stage, we weren't going to be out just for a couple of days. The message was the site's on fire and it's still burning and it's still spreading. And although not yet really quantifiable, that there was a fair indication that the damage was going to be quite significant. And we're probably going to be out for a bit longer than we planned. If we were lucky, we might be out for 4 weeks, probably 6. And if we were really unlucky, maybe a couple of months. So you then go straight back to your department updates. Where were we? How would we manage to get everything sorted for the weekend? And the good news was we had managed to get everything organized. We were really only going to be in a position where we were failing to hit about 100 odd trays of orders for all our customers. Everything else was going to be fine. So the immediate short term is sorted. and you can get on and start work on the more longer medium term stuff. And that's what our department heads started working with, making assumptions. We're going to be out of here now for a couple of months. So what are we going to do? What does that mean? And what will we require? And what help and support are we going to need? And that's followed very quickly by the feedback on the comms. And what we found, and I would hope that anybody in the same circumstances would find exactly the same, was the level of support was exceptional. People only wanted to know what they could do to help. And you never know that's going to be the situation until the chips are down, your back's against the wall, and you are staring down the barrel of that particular gun. And all people want to do is put their arm around you and do everything they can to support. So you're immediately back into action-driven behaviours. And I think that's where a business continuity plan helps. So you plan to meet again. We chose a 3-hour window. And at that point, we're still thinking this isn't great, but it's still temporary. It's still a couple of months at worst. But the reality became fairly clear fairly quickly. By 2 o'clock, we knew we'd lost more than chills and a bit of equipment, really. We were actually losing the battle for our entire carrot and Swede wash plant. We'd gone from sort of losing a big toe probably to losing a couple of limbs, and we had to really regroup at that point.
Wow.
We were saying, this is not looking good, team. This isn't short term. This isn't even semi-medium term. We're really now talking fairly long term. Maybe, heaven help us, we might not be back until Christmas. The extent of the burn and the fire was significant. And that creates a very different set of comms that you need to be delivering to everybody, to your stakeholders, to your staff, to your customers, to your everybody involved. And you end up having to create a very different business continuity plan, a very different plan, still using your BCP to deliver that. But as I said earlier, the upside of it means that the immediacy could just, and I do say just lightly, could just be actioned and be got on with, because you've put that to bed very early on, and you really are working on what needs to happen now. And is it the business continuity plan? Is it how you embrace it? I think the two go hand in hand. But regardless of how awful the situation is, having that plan in place means you're solution driven. You go into assessment of problem, delivery of solution. What does it mean? What are we going to do? How are we going to sort it? And when you approach it from that manner, it's awful. It is, you can't take anything away from that, but you become driven to find a solution. And we arranged to meet in another 3 hours time. And by early afternoon, our insurers were on site. And I would say at this point, even considering the forensic challenge, which I do completely understand, our insurers were fantastic. You don't appreciate what they do until you need them. And what they do is what they do every day. Their support throughout and their guidance and their encouragement, it was second to none. So together with our insurers and the fire chief, we spent, I think, probably one of the most sobering afternoons of my working career.
Wow.
Being informed that the wind was changing direction and the fire brigade were unable to stop the fire. Their best hope was to be able to control the burning. They were likely to be on site for at least another 3 days. And they would do everything they could to control the spread, to let us salvage our parsnip line, but they couldn't guarantee that the steelwork would be salvageable. We were still living in this world of hope. We're going to be back in there. We will be, but then we will get that parsnip line. It will be fine. And our final business continuity plan meeting of that day was probably our darkest hour, but I think it was also a defining moment, because that reality of what was actually going to be lying ahead of us hit. We're losing our carrot wash plant, we're losing our Swede wash plant, we're losing our packing plant, we're going to lose our intake area, we've lost our chills, you know, it truly was a case of, you know, we're going to keep the parsnip plant. The distribution chill will be okay. What we were going to distribute out of there, I have no idea. When we could pack anything, and that's another question for another day. But we you know, we had this confidence that we will be okay, and we'll get some things going, and we'll be able to get back in with the parsnip line. It will be good. But the magnitude of what lay ahead of us was huge, and we did realize at that point, you know, we weren't living in cloud cuckoo land. We did realize that this was not a repair job. This is a rebuild job, and that we were going to need a complete new wash plant, a complete new packing plant for our biggest, I mean, carrots, our biggest volume crop, and that was going to take a year or so to complete. And, notwithstanding, you know, we had Christmas in the middle of that.
Yeah.
So short term, we were getting some help and assistance from our competitors. We'd moved people from one production site to another. We were looking at short term different procurement plans, and that was great, but actually that wasn't going to cut it. Our operational issues were quite different now. We were going to have to find somewhere sort of semi-permanent to wash and grade carrots for the crop that was in the ground in the here and now, but also the crop that had just been planted for the coming year, because, you know, we just finished planting our coming year's crops two weeks earlier. And we realized that the recovery period was going to be long, and it was going to be arduous and quite a Herculean task in many respects. But we were committed, we were rebuilding, and we were starting as soon as we could. And you then go into this period of, you know, we've got the fire brigade on site, and the momentum of the plan, the momentum of the process that you are now in. I used to work with a HR director many years ago who said, get into process. That was his guide to everybody. If you're going through a difficult period, if things are challenging, get into process, because once you're in process, the process takes control. It takes the emotion out of it, and you will deliver. And he was absolutely right. We were in our process here, and you're constantly living in this environment where you're getting new news, things are being drip fed, contingency plans get made, get changed, get altered. And you're constantly communicating and constantly meeting with people, whether it's your staff, whether it's your customers, whether it's your growers, your stakeholders. And when the fire brigade left, I'm going to bear with me a few moments. I am going to just show you the scenes that we were left with when the fire brigade did eventually leave the middle of the following week. This is what a burnt out factory looks like.
Oh, good grief. Oh, that's the worst one. Crikey.
I'm going to keep you.
It spreads so quickly. Oh.
It does. I mean, that previous one, you'll see this is a chill. So this is where it did actually start. And, you know, the carrots themselves didn't burn.
Right.
It was interesting, the things that did and didn't burn.
Yep.
And I can tell you that customers' trays don't burn. They melt into something that, you know, even the most industrial of plants cannot break up. As the roof collapsed entirely, the steelwork is absolutely bent, buckled, and
Susie, by the end of that first day, did you realize it was a total loss, that element of the site?
Not by the end of that first day.
Right.
2 or 3 days later, we knew. I say you keep getting information drip fed into you. You know, you think you're going to keep a bit of plant, and then you realize you're not going to keep a bit of plant. There's so many things that you have no concept of as you go through. You know, the insurers come in and they assess the concrete, for example, on your entire plant, and their assessment from the structural engineer is that the concrete's been exposed to too high temperatures for too long. So when you are rebuilding, you then have to lift up all your concrete.
Wow, ground up.
So, you know, you've got a heck of a lot of good class, good type 1 when you're relaying, but you got a bit of work to do to get there. Yeah. And, you know, I think for me, one of the things that the BCP gives you is that structure for the first 24 hours, because they truly, in my view, they're the truly critical hours. How you manage that first 24 hours, how you react to the situation in that period, that determines how you springboard your recovery. Yeah. And as I said, everything's new. There's a constant drip feed of info. You're making decisions that, you know, you're partially blindfold while you're doing that. things you've never thought about, things you've never considered. I mean, we were lucky. We had a split site operation. We could move people. We could set up a command center elsewhere, but you don't have access to everything that you would normally do. And people want answers. They want decisions. They want guidance. And you just can't give them what they want. Yeah. But there is a wonderful thing that comes through of it. And that's been the support that we got. And that, you know, God forbid anyone should ever be in that situation. We'd be just there to give again. Your competitors become your allies.
Susie, I was going to mention this. In very few industries, if you think the same thing happened to, say, a shoe manufacturer, their competitors would be not laughing at them, but would not be assisting them. The fact that your competitors, the word competitor means you're competitive, but they're actually helping you is awe-inspiring.
Oh, absolutely. As I say, they become your allies and your teammates, and you're all in the same corner together. And you know, I heard it so often from so many people, and they look you in the eye, or they give you a hug, and they just say, "There, but for the grace of God."
Yeah.
And I think we all feel that.
Yeah.
And in fairness, it was probably we did have one moment of wobble, and that was that very first BCP meeting. You know, the teams assembled in the meeting room. Our production director came in, and she picked up the BCP folder, and she was chairing the meeting. She shook her head, and she lifted it up. She dropped it on the table, and she said, "What's the point?" And the room fell silent. And she looked at the faces in the room, and she immediately picked the book back up and went, "There's every point. Come on, let's go." and from that moment, we just never looked back.
Wow.
And you know, that are there defining moments? Are there things that just galvanize people that you never forget? That's one of them.
Yeah.
And that 24 hours is so important. You know, our insurers told us after the event, well, not after the event, but, you know, a few weeks in, when we were saying, "Oh, the size of this job," and they said, you'll be fine, you'll succeed. And you're looking at them going, "Well, yeah, thanks very much. You pop in here once a week, twice a week, and go through the plans with us and tell us we'll succeed. What makes you so confident?" And they said, "It's simple. If you make a decision to rebuild within that first 24 hours, you've got a 95% chance of success. For every 24 hours you leave it after that, you half your chances of success."
Wow. We're learning some stuff today. Wow.
That's it's a fairly hard message to hit you. And I'm glad we knew after we'd made that call, because we had decided to rebuild, and our insurers provided us with a project manager. He was on site by Friday evening. And if our insurers were great, calling our project manager was absolutely superb. I still maintain he was one of the best things ever to have happened to us. One of the best people could have ever crossed our threshold.
Wow.
Yeah, he was he was an expert in what he did. He did these sorts of project rebuilds, across the board, everything from food factories to hotels to domestic residences to you name it. That is his job. He's an expert. He was like a guardian angel to us. He was a coach. He was a mentor. My goodness, he was a disciplinarian of a headmaster. Then he stepped out of line. You knew it. All rolled into one. And there is no doubt in my mind you need someone of that sort of caliber, that sort of experience or expertise to help you, to support you, to guide you, because it's such a significant piece of work, and nobody has the experience or the wherewithal without having been. And
Susie, have you finished with your PowerPoint? Because it'd be lovely to see you.
Yeah, no, I've got a couple of. I'm just going to show you a few more. So we did rebuild, and the rest is history. We made it bigger and we made it better. We took it down, and that's what it looks like when it's coming down. This is the bit in red is the bit we lost entirely.
Huge. The
bit in black is the bit that we had to re-roof entirely, courtesy of the fire. We also had to wipe down every single surface in there to remove any acid rain. And then, as you see, you just
crikey, you see the size of it now.
And rebuild and take it down. And this is the bit, all this concrete gets dug up, and you end up with all of this. And the steel structure you think you're going to put up gets changed because you have to rebuild. So, you know, it was a terrible thing, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to us. And, you know, have I got some takeouts for it? Yes, of course I do. Would you like me to share them? It's entirely up to you.
Yes, please. I've learned about battle boxes. The keep with the get in the process. For the project manager, can you just say that bit again about the insurers? About if you decide to rebuild on the first day of the fire, you got was it a 90% chance of
95% chance of success, and for every 24 hours you leave it after that halves.
That's staggering. Right, Susie, carry on.
Yeah. So, except you don't have the answers. You won't have the answers. You don't know what the questions are. We have a water treatment plant, and we didn't think for a second. These are all our lagoons. We didn't think for a second we were going to have to handle acid fire water.
Oh, God.
This is our water treatment plant. It's got a biomass in there and membrane filters that are not designed to cope with acid water. But we couldn't put it to the foul drains. We had to handle it through here. We'd no idea if it was going to work or not. There are unknown unknowns. Wow. I mean, did you know that stainless steel rusts and spoils with acid fire water?
No,
we didn't either, and neither did they, because they cleaned everything. And these guys came in things like hazmat suits with a single wipe cloth. They wiped once. Wow. And then industrial wasted. And 2 weeks later, the rust spots were coming back through. Stainless rusts, more equipment that we lost. Involve people. You know, you asked me earlier, you know, what's your management style? And you know, I am so focused on the fact that I think people are what it's about. We were back producing in part of the shed with a small sweet line 6 weeks after the fire.
Excellent.
This guy here, Abby, let me introduce you to Abby.
Hello,
he's been
Abby.
25 years with us. We met him the morning we started back at Orkey, and he came running across the car park. He gave me a huge hug and tears in his eyes. And he just said, "Oh, I'm back home at Orkey. Thank you so much." He was so happy, and he was thinking, "What are you thanking me for?" You know, it's incredibly humbling. And I spoke to him today and said, "Do you mind if I tell that story?"
Oh, bless.
And he was, no, it's so true. Tell it. So engage with people, and the people. You know, when you're rebuilding, we made a big mistake. We were well on our redesign build before we actually got the guys on the ground, the guys that operate the equipment on a daily basis, whether the production operatives, the hygiene operatives, the engineering operatives. You know, we had the management team designing the kit, but actually, if I was ever doing it again, you'd get the operators involved early doors.
Isn't there an old mantra in fresh produce? If you want to know what's going on in a business, ask the forklift driver or other some of the people, because they know the nuts and bolts of what's actually going on and what works and what doesn't work, because they're the ones in it. Yeah.
And do you know, there are going to be bumps on the road, so brace yourself for them. You know, we put up a marquee. Within 3 months, we had a marquee on site for washing carrots. A marquee's great. A marquee's fantastic in the summer. A marquee's okay in the spring and in the autumn as well. But in the winter of 2010, 2011, which was the coldest winter in living memory, when we had 12 inches of snow and minus 16 outside, snow loading isn't something that's considered in the design and build of marquees. But, you know, as Debbie will attest to, we kept carrots washed through there for about 15 months. And some of these panels that you can see, they blew off in a wind the day that the marquee was coming down. We had ash clouds to deal with. Christine was quite right. Beginning of June, we had people with equipment being flown in. They got caught in the ash clouds. We had equipment being built in New Zealand and Christchurch, and you know, Christchurch was hit with its second earthquake. The manufacturing site that was building the plant was hit. When we flew out there to reorganize plans. When the plans were put in place, they then discovered that the ships that were going to be taking the equipment from Christchurch could no longer dock in port because the port had been hit by the earthquake, and so you have to find another way. Our insurers at one point were looking at, you know, these huge big military cargo aircraft. At one point they were looking at these to fly the equipment off New Zealand to get it into the UK
Wow.
And when we got all of that sorted, one of the other manufacturers who manufactured all our wash out equipment, they went into liquidation halfway through the build. So, it was a period of having to be pretty robust but actually also having to be incredibly agile mentally. You need that resilience. You need to have your feet firmly planted on what you can't move on. But if you have a mental resilience and a mental willingness to make it happen, my view is always you will find the solutions.
Yeah. And people grow from adversity. Do you think you're a better business? And I don't mean output wise, but management and team wise. Are you a better business of that adversity that you all went through?
I think absolutely. And I think the team that went through it will never forget it. And they together will be they are a much better. Better is a tough word because it suggests they weren't good enough. They're a much more rounded, more experienced group of people. And I think one of the things you do take out of that is that you need to, as I say, you need to take people with you and understand that everybody's going to be affected by it. And you need to take time to engage with people. So that support piece that you develop with one another during that period, you never lose. And I think you build relationships and you build a resilience and a reliance on one another that you probably never experienced before.
Yeah.
Susie, it's not a sprint. That's the harsh reality of it all.
Susie, if it's okay to ask, a contact just asked me on WhatsApp, who was your insurer? They sound fantastic.
We were with Aon, but there was a number of insurers underneath there. And that's ultimately, I would say to anyone, have the confidence, have the courage. If you need to, do it, because the results will be worth it in the end. And if it does ever happen to you and you are ever unlucky enough to be in that situation, good luck and be brave, be bold. You won't regret it.
Yeah. I love that final picture. That's Dave, I don't know if it's the right thing to say, Susie. You must be so proud now.
I mean, it was the best disaster that could have ever before.
Well, that's the quote of the year, Debbie. The best disaster we could have ever had.
I'm stunned, and each time I think about it, it was such a big thing to do, and it is amazing that they've come through it and they're on the other side of it, better, bigger, more rounded people. I just think it's amazing. To you and your team's credit, there's just no words to explain or express. I was incredibly fortunate that Susie did another favour for me. Probably only about, how long had you been up and running? A couple of years, where you had that gang of farmers round and hosted them and showed them all of it, and you were just so matter of fact about what had happened. Even and they're sort of fairly rounded farmers. They were blown away by it. So
I think you don't. None of us have the understanding of what fire damage does until it hits you, and you wouldn't ever want it to. And so when it does, you just roll up your sleeves and get on with it.
Christine, thoughts, takeaways?
Do you have I would say probably reciprocal business continuity plan which incorporates use of competitors, and you now, or did you have it then, or do you have it now?
No, we didn't have it then, and strangely enough, we don't have it now either. I do believe, though, that were that situation ever to happen to anybody, I don't think for a second any one of us would hesitate picking up the phone to competitors and saying help. And I cannot for the life of me imagine anybody taking any stance other than tell me what you need me to do.
Yeah.
But a lot of businesses will actually have emergency offices, and they pay for the reservation of that facility. So these offices are permanently there. Everything is there that a business can come in at an hour's notice, but everybody pays towards it. I suppose there's nothing, or do we need something like that in our industry as well? Just an empty warehouse. Everybody pays towards being kept there for such an event, or do you think everybody's got so much spare capacity they can absorb? I mean, now you're all becoming so big that not everybody's necessarily got spare capacity for something the size of you.
Well, I think the challenge rises perhaps not so much around an industry-wide capability or capacity, but the fact that everybody's needs are so different. And most businesses will have a spare site, not a spare site, but a spare facility. As I say, in our case on site, we had the standalone engineering workshop, but we use one of our farms as a third site. So we've got three boxes, three complete setups of everything that we might need in a battle box across various sites. And we would use those as the base for setting up should we ever need again. The thing about losing a site, as we did, was one person alone can't help you. The help came from a number of different places, and then largely, we were fortunate that there was bits of equipment going around in various, sales that we managed to cobble together under this marquee. And again, I come back to that where do you start looking for a marquee? Well, that's where your expertise comes in, and your project manager that's putting up a marquee for the local hotel that's just burnt down, or they have these contacts and they know what you can get and what works and what's worth. That's a gamble you should take, and don't go near that one.
You can imagine that phone call. I'm looking for a marquee for how many people? 50 people? No, 1,000 ton of carrot.
It reminds me a bit, which some of us may well have been through, but when you have to speak to a funeral director, and because they do it all the time to do, and you're in a state of shock, but you've got to get through things. And I'd never thought of an insurance company like that, so you've totally changed my view. And of course they will do that. I just haven't thought about it.
I had no idea what to expect from them. I've never contemplated that would be something that they would do. But as I say, a phenomenal bunch of people.
Everyone, we're slightly running out of time, but I just want to ask Kirsty, with your MDS, Management Development Services hat on, are you aware of the companies that your trainees go to? Do you ever pick up about disaster recovery plans?
No, not so much about that. I think, touch wood, they've all been in fairly lucky situations where they've not necessarily had to implement them, or not whilst a trainee's there. But I was sort of listening to your story, I just think it's such a fantastic way that you were able to implement it, but also the support that you were getting from your staff. They were there to want you to succeed.
Totally.
And I think that with the disaster plan aside, there must be something that you're doing, which I think would lead to another really interesting conversation, probably don't have time for, but what is it about the way that your business operates that mean that your staff, through quite disastrous situation, are like, we still want to be here. We're going to work in a marquee under snow. We're going to celebrate when we can come back in. There's not many businesses, I think, that would have that much dedication from their staff. Yeah,
totally agree. And we've got to leave on a positive. Susie, what's the positive future about Kettle when we hopefully get you back in 2, 3, 5 years down the line? Let's say 5 years down the line. What's the shape and form of Kettle going to be like then? Is it going to be world domination, or what's the direction of Kettle?
I think the direction of Kettle, Max, is always going to be the direction that has been, which is to do what we do it well, and excel at what we do, and let that be our growth plan.
Excellent. It reminds me of that phrase that we've had before from a South African about COVID. Never waste a crisis. And Debbie, that's definitely what Kettle Produce have done. I'm not sure if it's politically correct to use that phrase, but look at where Kettle have gone. They've had that backward step, or significant backward steps, but they've pushed on from there very successfully. Debbie, would you like to wrap up for us, please?
I am just thank you very much indeed, Susie, and all the team at Kettle again for stepping up and taking us on a journey, explaining your story and giving us sort of hope for the future, because it is such a wonderful story of resilience, recovery, but it's also very much about the people, the culture, and the trust. And I just think it's an amazing place to visit, an amazing place to have the opportunity to interact with. So thank you, and thank you all at Kettle very much for sharing that today, because it wasn't easy, and I think we have all learnt a lot, and I certainly have again. So thank you.
Yeah, we can all learn through that adversity to make a better business. Christine, Kirsty, anything else to say before we wrap up?
Well, just that we have a speaker for the next event on the 1st of November, which is Juno McKee from NIAB, who's going to talk to us about the complexity of managing projects to deliver focused output. I think actually Susie's done quite a bit of that today,
Yes.
different circumstances. But yeah, we've actually got people writing to me now asking if I've got any slots so they can come. So all looking very positive. But Susie, that was absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much indeed.
Well, not at all. Thank you all very much for inviting me, and I do appreciate it. It's been thoroughly enjoyable.
No problem. And Susie, can you tell your IT manager that your head of IT that I'll take him out for a beer in a minute, but it will take me about 6 hours to get up there. But if he can just bear with me,
I'm sure he'll meet you halfway.
Hey,
He's a good sort.
Can we see him?
Well,
Can we see him?
bless him, he has sat here the whole time.
Come on, here he is.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Brilliant. There you go. The fantastic team.
He's not even opened the bag of chocolate they had there either to keep him going. So
Excellent. Thank you, Susie. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
thank you all very much.
Thank you.